Back everyone. So the iPhone 13s just came out, so we have to go and do a camera comparison between the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 10, which was the $1,000 flagship from 2017. Now, the way these cameras work, both of them can do 4K at 60 on the back, which is really good, but on the front, only 1080p on the iPhone 10, 4K at 60 on the iPhone 13. On top of that, you do have a pretty much a way better camera setup on the iPhone 13. I'm just going to spoil it. With the 13, you're getting all those years of improvements. You're getting a wide-angle lens and an ultra-wide sensor on the iPhone 13. 10, you're getting a wide-angle lens and a telephoto lens. So a little bit of a difference in terms of the camera setups. They both have most of the core features inside. You're missing things like ProRAW photos and ProRes video, whatever those things are. And you're also missing cinematic mode on the iPhone 10, which is essentially like portrait mode for video. You still have portrait mode on both, which is good, but now, the way these photos comparison worked, the iPhone 10 photos will be on the left, the iPhone 13 photos will be on the right. I tapped to focus on both of these photos. They were taken pretty much the exact same time, and let's just jump into it. So immediately I can see a few differences. So I pretty much focused in on the bulb right here, and you can see there's a little bit of a difference. So with the iPhone 13, which is on the right, you can see that the background is definitely more blurred out on the iPhone 13, and it's definitely more in focus on this phone. With the iPhone 10, you can see it's kind of like still in focus, like everything in the background. And also it seems like it's a much, I guess, washed out or kind of like over brightened on the iPhone 10 in some areas. If you look at the flower at the bottom, you can see it definitely looks a little bit better, I think, on the iPhone 13. And I just think when I look at the iPhone 10 photo, it definitely looks a little bit more, not washed out, but a little bit over brightened. I think that's the best way I can put it. And it seems kind of uneven, where the iPhone 13 looks like actually a pretty good photo, which is pretty impressive. So with the first photo, I'm already seeing some differences. Now with the next photo, I think it's more of the same, but actually the iPhone 10 did a much better job than I thought it was going to. So if I go ahead and zoom all the way over here, and if I zoom in here, again, I kind of see the same thing where the iPhone 10 doesn't blur out the background as much as the iPhone 13, but it still did a pretty good job. If I go ahead and zoom into this spot all the way over here, you can see that you're pretty much seeing the same exact thing you can see on the background of the iPhone 10 photo, a little bit more brightened out, which may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing, it really depends up to you. But in terms of the actual thing I'm trying to focus in on, both did a pretty good job, and the iPhone 13 did a great job, but the iPhone 10 actually did a way better job here than the first photo, which is pretty interesting. Now this next photo, again, of the brick that I usually take, and it's nothing crazy, but it is very interesting to see how both photos and how both phones interpret the same colors. So you can see on the iPhone 10, a little bit more, I don't know the best way to describe it, but it seems a little bit more darkened out, and maybe not as, popping in terms of the color standpoint as the iPhone 13. The 13 definitely looks like the more inviting photo, I think, and these two photos kind of look like two different times of day. This one looks like, bright and sunny. This one looks a little bit like more towards evening, if that's the best way I can describe it. So that pretty much covers this one too. Now this next photo is very interesting. I went to pretty much the worst lighting condition I could go into, and I pretty much just took the photo. Now in the center, I haven't really been able to find like crazy things between these two photos, but definitely when you're stepping back to the iPhone 10s, you're seeing a little bit more graininess and a little bit more of like a washed out color on the iPhone 13. Definitely not a big deal, but it's something to keep in mind. I also saw with the iPhone 13 on the top left, it was kind of a little washed out. Nothing super crazy, but something to keep in mind. If we look at the bottom corner over here, it does seem like there's a little bit more noise on the iPhone 10 photo. So again, another thing to keep in mind, you're getting an overall way better experience, I think, on the iPhone 13 than on the iPhone 10, especially in lower light photos. And now this next photo was pretty much the same exact thing. I went to bad lighting and took the photo. I think I focused here, and you can see both of them did a pretty good job. It does kind of look like the iPhone 10 focused in a little bit better. But the one thing I want to show you guys is this specific comfort zone, whatever this little option is, whatever it is. I want you to see how much more in focus and how much less noise is going on with the iPhone 13 photo than on the iPhone 10 photo. I mean, they both definitely don't look amazing, but when you compare them, I mean, this is definitely more grainy, and it looks a lot less, I guess, good compared to the iPhone 13. It's a lot more sharpened out. You can see the text is completely good on this one, and you can even see with the iPhone 10 a lot of this like noise and a lot of this kind of grain that's going on. I don't think anybody's zooming in this much, but you kind of get the idea. Even if you kind of zoom out like this, I mean, you can kind of see some differences. The iPhone 13 did a really good job at sharpening that out. So that was a pretty big thing I've been noticing. So with these, lower end iPhones or these older iPhones, you're definitely going to be seeing some differences there. Now with this photo, I didn't really see that big of a difference. It was just in these curtains and direct sunlight. Nothing super crazy. I don't want to spend 30 minutes talking about it. Now this photo is one of my favorite photos, and this is just another case in point of the iPhone 13 and its color balance, where the iPhone 10 just isn't really doing so well anymore with, balancing the colors that are coming out. So in this case, again, taken at the exact same times for the most part, you can see the iPhone 13 did a really good job at evening out the colors. So even though the sunlight was pretty much at the same spot, you can see where the sunlight is hitting it, it did a really good job at balancing out the colors that was coming through with it. With the iPhone 10, it's not a bad photo, but you can definitely see it over just sunlighted this specific spot, and it didn't do a great job. I mean, I think it's good, but even when you look at the blur aspect, when you look at the background, the iPhone 13 did a better job of blurring out the background as well. And I think this is when we start seeing some bigger differences with these cameras. I think in outdoor conditions, the iPhone 13 does a much better job, but even in indoor conditions, there's a lot less noise in a lot of these photos with the iPhone 13. So without a doubt, I'm definitely seeing some pretty big differences here. Now this next photo I took of portrait mode. Now the iPhone 10 I don't think supported portrait mode with animals, but it still kind of added a blur effect, which is pretty interesting. So in this case, I mean, look, the iPhone 13 did a really good job in this photo. The iPhone 10 I think did a good job too for as old of a phone it is. But I mean, there's definitely no competition. If you look at anything else besides, the face and everything, you can just see how much more the colors are popping on the iPhone 13. And I don't know, I can't tell if it blurred out the background. I think it did because, when you look here. So if this is the actual background blur, the iPhone 10 did a decent job for how old the phone is, but the iPhone 13 did a much better job here. So for sure, you're getting a much better camera on portrait mode on the iPhone 13 than on the iPhone 10. Now this next photo, I just wanted to see the differences in terms of how much you can zoom in and zoom out. So this is it on the wide angle lens. These were in different aspect ratios, so they're both pretty much the same thing. This is us zooming in as far as we can on these iPhones. And here's the thing with the iPhone 10, you are able to zoom in a lot more into a photo than the iPhone 13, as you can see. Because of that additional telephoto lens, you have that capability, which is really, really cool. Now, when you zoom out a little bit more, you can see that the iPhone 10, even on a different aspect ratio, can't really zoom out as much as the iPhone 13 because of that ultra-wide sensor. So you're definitely getting a lot more capability, like I mentioned before, on something like an iPhone 13 than on an iPhone 10, but you do get that telephoto lens on the iPhone 10. That's a pretty big thing to keep in mind. Now this final photo was just a basic one. I just went ahead and took it of this, whatever this chair was in this deck. And again, nothing super crazy. One thing I've been kind of seeing though is if I go and zoom into this specific back portion right here, that the iPhones that are older are kind of keeping a little bit more noise in the background, and it's a little hard to tell. You can't really tell super crazy, but if you kind of look at this area on both, you can see that the iPhone 10 a little bit more noised out, especially if you look at this area right here. If I go and kind of like go like this, if you look at this specific area right here and you look at the same spot on the iPhone 13, pretty much a lot more noise on something like an iPhone 10 than on an iPhone 13. It's something super crazy, but I mean, if that's the only difference, to be honest, you're not really going to notice too many differences. Like if I go ahead and zoom out all the way, they kind of look like the same photo, if I'm being honest. It's not until you start zooming in and doing all these crazy things, that's when you start seeing the bigger differences. And to be honest, I think the iPhone 10 is still a pretty decent camera. It still kind of surprised me even in this one, but you're really going to be missing out on things like cinematic mode, 4K 60 on the front, those new Pro modes that we have, ProRes and ProRAW. But I do think if you still have an iPhone 10, it's still pretty good. But the iPhone 13 is definitely the better one I would recommend. The video quality is going to be better. Cinematic mode is really cool. Portrait mode with animals is really awesome. And in a lot of these outdoor conditions, you're definitely getting a much better photo on the iPhone 13 than on the iPhone 10. And all these photos I took, the iPhone 13 beat the iPhone 10. But there were some where it was pretty close, to be honest, like this last one. So in terms of that, that covers it up here. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section as well. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.